Hi, welcome back. I'm Dr. Kevin Orieux. I'm the CEO of Aararat Consulting, and this is part 4 of our video series on the 5 best ways to lose a customer and best practices that you can implement to avoid losing customers. In our first 3 videos, we talked about don't be available and how if we do not invest the amount of time, resources, and finances we need to invest to have frontline people to be available for our customers. If we use voicemail, if we expect everything to be done through voice prompts because we don't want to spend the money, that is a recipe for bad investments. The second part of our video series, we're talking about the cost of being distracted. We're actually talking about the psychology and the neurophysiology of this whole myth of multitasking, and that multitasking is actually impossible. When we're distracted, it costs us. It costs us customers, it costs us time, it costs us frustration like crazy, and it costs companies huge amounts of lost profits. The third thing that we talked about was how miscommunication is the foundation and the origin of almost every problem in our corporate world, even in our personal world. But miscommunication specifically is an expensive problem for the simple reason that everybody thinks they're good communicators, including people in senior management. At Aararat Consulting, we always insist on doing communication training because communication training, we know, is the yellow brick road to the Emerald City, if you want to call it that. It's the golden path to improving customer service, improving client relationships, improving synergy, and increasing your bottom line. Except most people don't understand just how important communication is. And that's why with Aararat Consulting, when we do corporate training, specifically when we're doing corporate training for management, we are teaching them how they can teach their rank and file how to communicate better, because lack of good communication is the most expensive problem in business, for the simple reason that miscommunication leads to misunderstanding. And when you have misunderstanding, you have conflict with your customers, with your subordinates, interdepartmental angst, and you don't fulfill your company's mission and vision. Now we move on to part 4 of this 5-part video series. And part 4, as to the 5 best ways to lose a customer, is don't be prepared and don't be consistent. The best example that I believe I can use for the whole idea of don't be prepared is the military. And I say that because I come from a military background. I was raised on military bases. An interesting thing about the military is they have very specific delegation principles. They have very accurate metrics for how to communicate between one level and this level. And if you think about it in a true military sense, which would be a battle, if you don't follow protocols accurately and consistently, people die. Being brought up in a military background was maybe the best type of preparation for me, that by the time I was in my mid-50s, I had been doing consulting now and corporate training for over 25 years, because the military teaches something that all businesses need to incorporate. I would go so far as all businesses must incorporate. And it's something called S.O.Ps. And S.O.P stands for Standard Operating Procedures. So let's just do a quick summary. What's standard operating procedures? It just means that there's a standard way for your people to do a certain procedure or a certain protocol, and they do it that way consistently. They do it with great discipline. You might even say military discipline. Now, why am I such a strong proponent of this military philosophy of SOPs, or standard operating procedures? It's not just because I was raised in a military background. It's because I have been doing corporate training for 25 years, and I have seen how frustrating and how costly it is when employees do not have standardized mechanisms and consistent approaches to protocol. Here's the example I wanted to use. This is why I'm so excited about it. I had the privilege about 15 years ago of being invited as a VIP guest onto the u.s.s. Abraham Lincoln. Well, you say, what's the u.s.s. Abraham Lincoln? It's one of the 5 largest ships that sail the ocean. It's a battleship. It's an aircraft carrier. And it's a Nimitz class nuclear weapon carrier. In other words, doesn't matter how we feel about peace and war. The fact of the matter is, our society, our world is at conflict. We're always at conflict. That's what Aararat Consulting is all about. How to reduce your conflict, how to reduce your stress, how to reduce your frustration, and how everybody can get along better. Be synergistic, it's called. And when everyone's synergistic, they enjoy their work better. When they enjoy their work better, they're engaged. And the Gallup Corporation has demonstrated by longitudinal studies over a decade long that 85% of workforces are not engaged. And when your people are not engaged, you are not as productive as you could be and as you should be, because we don't understand what causes disengagement. Well, the military does. Because when people involved in the u.s.s. Abraham Lincoln and the battle or potential battle exercises it's doing, those people understand that they have to be disciplined and they have to understand standard operating procedures, because literally the safety of our standard of living, our lifestyle, and our freedom could depend on it. And here's the crazy thing about the u.s.s. Abraham Lincoln. As a VIP guest, I was given a private tour, myself and my son, with 2 commanders from that amazing vessel. And that's because I had done training and consulting with these people. It's how I got invited. And on the u.s.s. Abraham Lincoln, there are 5,500 members of the crew. And get a load of this, the average age, when you take those 5,500 people, is less than 20 years old. You say, well, how does that work? I mean, if this is a Nimitz class aircraft carrier, one of the largest ships in the world, what do you mean the average age is less than 20? It's because there's very few commanding officers, and there's a whole bunch of rank and file crew. But the officers have all been taught the SOPs, and those officers help everybody that they're responsible for understand this is how we do this, this is what you need to know, this is exactly how you perform it, and they're trained and trained and trained and disciplined and disciplined and disciplined. In other words, if at the top, and I'm talking to you people in senior management, the CEOs, if at the top you understand that you have to get all of your people to do the same thing, relatively speaking, repeatedly, you want to make sure that it's fine if you do the same thing over and over again and there's never any variation, but it's when variation comes in that training becomes important, because you have to teach your people how to think around the variations. That's what standard operating procedures is about. It teaches you how to do it in a standardized fashion so you don't screw up. And then it teaches you, if you go a little above or a little below or a little left or a little right of center, here's how you solve your problems. Well, who knows how to solve the problems? The senior officers, in your case, your management team, the people that have experience. But your young people don't have that experience, which is why you have to teach people SOPs, which is why you have to have consistency, which is why you have to invest. Yes, you have to invest in training, because if you don't embrace the whole idea of standard operating procedures, and if you don't invest in the wisdom of consistency. And if you don't train and retrain, that's the disciplining process. If you don't teach them how to be disciplined, then guess what? All young people are going to screw up. It's predictable. It happens in every generation. This has nothing to do with millennials or anybody else. If you don't invest in creating standardized operating procedures and protocols, well, it's not like battle that someone's going to die, but your company can die.